Thanks for taking the time. I actually really do appreciate you taking the chance to chit chat with me so that we can hopefully turn this into something other people can learn by.
Not a problem.
So kind of give a brief background so that people are anchored on what exactly we're going to be talking about for this next piece of the interview.
So basically there's a recent push to do automation, a very big push to do automation. And there hadn't been a whole lot of interest in it since I initially did the proof of concept. And I built a proof of concept that handled a lot of the test cases that had, currently existed in the system that had already been.
This was all in silk test, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a proof of concept to get them to buy silk test and see if it suited their needs. And when I was kind of in a rush to cobble something together very quickly to show them that, hey, this does work for you. And I wanted to show them how it worked to see if it was what they wanted and suited their needs. And they said yes. So immediately after that, they wanted a certain amount of automation to help them do their regression testing for the transcription services side of it.
Yep.
So I just continued building off of the proof of concept, which was probably in hindsight a very bad idea.
Okay. So now that we've been kind of working with you a little bit on it, what kind of changes and improvements have you seen in the day-to-day work or automation? Since you mentioned it wasn't such a great idea to build it on the old automation, what did you change? What made it more effective?
Well, through the help of some developer friends.
Not sponsored at all.
Yeah, so we came across a lot of problems that I had initially had in the project, just from the proof of concept. So started building on what was essentially a shaky foundation. It was kind of just me spewing out code in a stream of consciousness just to get things running and working. And they worked, and they did, but God help anybody else that wanted to look at it. So the other really big problem with the proof of concept was the fact that if anything at all changed in the application, it would break everything. And you would have to go through every single piece and try to fix stuff. And again, reading my code for somebody else, not so good. So after talking to developer, of course, came the concept of defensive programming. I guess a lot of it, one of the really interesting parts was object handling to get everything under control and help organize stuff. There's also, it pretty much went from casual conversation all the way up to polymorphism.
Yeah, there's that.
So just looking at the project, just the differences in the project, everything is a lot cleaner, just looking at it. And as far as the code itself, it kind of reads as if somebody were doing a script, which actually it is a script, but it's like reading a script from, like you were doing a play. It tells you exactly what's going on. You can look at it and say, okay, I know what that does. Even if you have no idea what's going on in the application or what the application is, what you're testing, you can still look at the project and say, I know what that does.
Fantastic.
And that makes a huge difference. So to give you an example from yesterday, I was teaching some of the other QAs, how to use the new project and some of the new methodologies that I've been applying from my developer friends. There was a particular part of the class I was putting together for letting them put together, and my naming scheme was slightly off, just ever so slightly. There's a drop-down box called clawback, and there's a function that selects the drop-down field, and then it chooses the selection for the clawback drop-down. So I had call, clawback drop-down, and clawback for the the function pieces. And he couldn't quite get it. So it clicked in my head that I need to make this cleaner. So now it says the clawback dropdown selection. And when that name change, just that minor name change, everything clicked from then on. So that's kind of where we are now.
So you're starting to actually get some of the benefits of communicative code.
Yes, that is a huge thing. And it's changed my ability to kind of get the other QAs involved in this, because before we were working off the proof of concept, they look at the code and it was intimidating, of course. Had no idea what the hell was going on because everything's written in just stuff being regurgitated from my brain, which, like I said, I think if somebody were to look into my head, I'd put somebody in therapy. So converting that to plain English essentially is what made everything click for everybody. And now they're
when you said putting it in plain English, you're talking about the test case in plain English, because we still have to write the selector code in silk test, right?
Yeah, the selector code and things like that, but that's where I'm getting to the point of writing functions as helper utilities for the other people, so that even a lot of the things that they would normally have to do and do repeatedly, I create a function for it, so that's in plain English as well.
So the function name is in plain English, and you call that as part of your test?
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
So that's what I've been doing. And that's where we are compared to what we were before.
Makes sense. So you mentioned a couple of times that this came out of talking with your dear developer friends, and putting it in my own words, of course. But yes. I'm curious, normally like the relationship between devs and QAs is characterized at best as antagonistic, right?
So I'm honestly think the days of being QA and dev being on different sides of the fences, that needs to go away and should have been done away with a long time ago, because we're on the same team. The only difference is you're building the application and we're trying to make sure that the applications meet the customer needs so that we're all successful. That's the only difference between our teams. We're looking at the application to make sure it meets the requirements. You're building the application, and the end goal is to provide something to a customer that makes everybody happy. That's where we're successful. Anything other than that is just a load of crap.
I completely agree, but it sounds like your natural perspective on the problem kind of made you more willing or able to listen to a developer come in and tell you, well, maybe you should try this. Do you think that's about right?
That is true. But see, there's a key word you use there. You said, hey, maybe you should try this. You're not telling me what to do. You're giving me an idea so that I can go out and look at that idea or learn how to do something. But in the end, I'm doing it myself, my way.
Yeah.
The difference between telling somebody, hey, you need to do this way, and say, rather than saying what you just said, is, hey, I've got this idea, take a look at this. Totally different. And it's usually accepted different, especially when you're in a situation where there's a dev talking to a QA. Because again, there's still that misconception that we're on different teams, and we're not.
Makes a lot of sense.
There's also the fact that there has to be a certain amount of trust and willingness involved. And the willingness, for me, if I'm learning something new, something different, that makes my day. That's what makes my job a happy place, because I get to do something that, hey, I get to learn new skills. I improve my kung fu. Can't go wrong. Now, so trust.
It sounds a little like some of what made it work, on top of approaching it the right way, which I'm certain you're going to get to in the trust piece, but was that it clicked with your internal motivators. We spoke the same language of, hey, you want this new thing? Let me show you a new thing.
Yes. And that makes my day perfect. I mean, I've in the past been known to just abdicate jobs and find something else just because I'm bored. I'm not learning anything new, not picking up any new skills. I'm bored. And when you're bored, you tend not to be anywhere near as productive.
I can second that. Yeah. Haven't quite gone to the extreme of trying to find a new job because I was bored, but I definitely understand the disengagement that comes with I'm no longer mentally challenged by the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I was bad about things like that. I would hop jobs as soon as I got bored. Need something new. Gotta go.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more. You had mentioned you were starting onto a conversation on trust.
Okay, so trust is one of those things. It's not what most people think.
Okay.
A lot of people relate it to some sort of a morality thing, and hey, this person's a good person, I should trust them. Not so much for me. I don't work that way. Trust for me is something where we're all in the same boat, and I can look at my team. I know they got my back, and they know I've got theirs. Has absolutely nothing to do with it. Hey, you're a great person or whatever. In times where something's wrong, we all know we're going to come together and get it done. We're all willing to help each other. You got a question, you toss it out there, somebody's going to answer, probably multiple people are going to answer. You might get different answers. And that's even better if you get different answers, because now you have multiple things to look at, different ways to approach it, and you get to pick what's best for you. These guys on this team, I haven't had really much of. I've only had one case where I've had a team that had better communication than the one I'm in right now. And everybody on that team had known each other for at least 15 years.
Whew. Yeah, that would definitely improve communication.
A lot of the time, we didn't even have to say anything. Somebody just give you a look and be like, okay, all right, I'll take care of that. So this team, we all talk, we all communicate, everybody's been helpful. And that's kind of what makes the biggest difference in what I see in this team and other teams. We all talk, we all help. Everybody will throw out ideas. May not be the greatest idea, but we don't really care. It's something to look at. And
okay, so it sounds like there's a bit of a meritocracy set up.
Yeah, is really incredible.
Okay, so let me try and tease out a little bit of a generic wisdom from that. If you were having to make a recommendation for a developer who's on a team that isn't quite there yet, and the QA and he aren't seeing things eye to eye, what would you recommend to a developer from a QA's perspective that would be the most helpful way to start building you and I are on the same side? How can I show you that?
Oh, that's a hard one. You're pretty much gonna have to go to each other as equals, because again, you're on the same team, you're going for the same goal. A lot of the time I've seen cases where developers look at the QA as somebody that's not on the same level, and the same can be said for the QA. So you have to get together and have a certain amount of mutual respect for what you both do. And I'm guessing the mutual respect will kind of foster the kind of conversation that you're going to want to have.
Okay. So when you say the mutual respect for a developer talking to a QA, let's take the example of there's been a bug discovered, or if you prefer the term, a gap. We haven't decided whether we're going to file a ticket or not.
Right.
But how would be a good way for a dev to approach that with the mutual respect kind of a conversation? Let's assume that I'm under the impression it's not exactly a bug with my code, but you did find it and we should address it.
Okay. So let's say a developer did, let's assume it is the developer's code that's broken, right?
Sure. Okay.
QA found something. And if it's something particularly weird, make it fun. Make a joke out of it. Go to your QA and say, dude, how did you find this? Just how did you even find this?
What incantation did you use?
Yes. Was the wind blowing from the west and the moon full? But yeah, that's how you want to approach it. It's like because the QA is helping you. He found a bug in your code. It might have been something very, very obscure that you would have never thought to find, because QA and developers think in a whole different way.
Yep.
So if you go to them and say something like that, that's going to completely disarm any possible anger or, adversarial situation there could have been, because now they're like, yeah, that was funny, wasn't it?
Okay, but that comes in with me not coming in with the trying to prove it's not a bug with my stuff. I let go of that and I come in, okay, how did you find that?
Right, because really, who cares? It may not even, you may look at it and realize, hey, the QA did something so freaking strange that this is something that could never possibly happen. It could have been something environmental that's on the QA's machine. You don't know. But the fact is, this is something that was found. No matter whether it may not necessarily be relevant to the application as far as it going to production, but it was something. And if it's something, why not look at it? And if it turns out that it is a thing, hey, all the better.
But first I come with the intent to understand.
Right.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
So that's one of the great things about, again, the team I have. Everybody has a certain amount of respect for what everybody else does. Even if you don't like somebody, you still got to respect what they do. So it's just the way it is.
Makes sense. So if you had to, now let's flip that question on its head. If you were trying to advise a QA, like maybe pick yourself 5 years ago or a junior QA team member, on how to help their dev team start doing this mutual respect thing, what would you recommend as the first step for the QA?
Oh, wow. I'd say the biggest thing is don't treat bugs as somebody's fault.
Ooh. Okay, elaborate.
Because bugs are going to happen. Nobody's perfect. They're going to be bugs that you can't find as a QA. It's the nature of the beast. But if you're treating the bug as somebody's fault, you're automatically putting somebody on the defensive, because now you're laying blame on somebody. That doesn't work. There really isn't anybody to blame if they're going to be defects, because there are going to be defects. Go talk to somebody and say, hey, let's look at a way to solve this problem. Not really adversarial. You're just, hey, I got something here. You guys want to help me take a look at it?
Okay, so it's more of an invitation rather than a combative accusation.
Oh, yeah. You definitely don't want to go in combative. And a lot of people do that, oddly enough, and I don't know why. But when you find defects, it's something to be solved and investigated. It's kind of like a mystery. It's supposed to be fun to QA things, because you're looking for the mystery. Where can I find something that's so obscure but possibly damaging that nobody else would be able to look at it this way and find it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like being Sherlock Holmes of the developer world.
Yes, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it makes it a whole lot more fun when you look at it that way, because you're finding there's a mystery there. You just have to go find it.
So some of it sounds like you're trying to draw the developer into, for lack of a better term, the fun of being a QA, the fun of finding that really weird, unique way to break it so that we can fix it.
Right, because I've had situations where I've found defects, and I'll go to the developer, we'll sit down and start looking at it, trying to peel back the onion and find out what happened. And we'll get to the center of it, and we're both looking at it. How did that ever even work in the first place? So, yeah, there's always going to be a mystery, and it's just up to you to find it. And when you find it as the QA, if you see yourself as Sherlock Holmes, now you need to pull in Watson, and you got to figure it out. And your developer is your Watson. Same team.
Okay. So now, of course, with talking with developers, I admit, we have very, very weak egos. And so you may be trying to pull us into that conversation where it's about the mystery, but because our ego is tarnished by bugs, even though they happen, like you're going to start seeing one of them, even though you've entered the conversation the right way, start kind of closing up. When you see that, what's a good way to kind of help de-escalate it, pull away some of the fear and the pain so that they can come and engage in the conversation again?
If somebody starts pulling away because just it's an ego problem and the developer feels like, oh, this defect's on me, it's kind of hard to deal with that situation. I mean, it's weird, but you kind of have to nurture them into it by making sure that they understand, hey, this isn't something that's your fault. It works. We've just got to figure out how to make it work a little better. That's what we do. Because most of the time when a developer releases his code to QA, it works. Mm-hmm. Maybe something weird, some edge case scenarios that cause the problem, but generally their code works, and they generally try to test it on their local to make sure it works. So yeah, don't go there and just say, hey, dude, your shit's broken. Doesn't work.
That hurts.
Yeah. Say, hey, look, got this thing. Come take a look at it at my desk. See what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Let me know what you think. Because at that point, you're looking to get their input and you're getting them involved in something rather than saying, hey, your stuff's broken, you need to fix it, or you're a bad developer, man. How did you even let this get out?
Man. And the sad thing is, sometimes that's what we hear, even though that's not what you're saying.
Oh, I know. But the thing is, you've got to figure out how to say it in such a way that it can't be interpreted as that. So oddly enough, this goes back to the automation stuff we're doing, but generally when I speak to people, I'm very, very picky about the words I choose to use when I talk to them, because some things can have certain connotations that were unintended just because of the wording you used. Mm-hmm. So you have to go into it with kind of a positive attitude when you're talking about somebody who is maybe a little sensitive about their work. Mm-hmm. So take it in the sense that, hey, we're just taking a look at something. Don't make a big deal out of it. Get them involved and say, hey, this is what I'm saying. What do you think about this? Is this something best case? Am I looking at this wrong? Help me out. So you're no longer putting it on them saying, hey, I got this defect and it's you. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, I need to figure this out. Can you help me? Let's take a look at it. Because at that point, you're not even calling it a bug yet. You're just talking.
Okay, yeah, that actually makes it a lot safer.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You have to be very careful about the words you choose when you talk to somebody, because there's so many unintended consequences of just the way you say something to somebody, and it completely changes their outlook on everything related to that issue going forward.
Now, I imagine you're not necessarily advocating the QA not say anything until they know the perfect way to say it, but that as they work with these developers, they kind of learn who's a little sensitive and who needs it a certain way, and kind of adjust to the person.
Yeah, it's almost like in entertainment, they always say, know your audience. Mm-hmm. This is what you have to do. You have to know your audience. And that's just in life in general, because hell, you go out, walk outside and say good morning to somebody, and that might turn into a nightmare real quick by just saying good morning, because, hey, you don't know your audience. This person may not be a morning person. This person
may not have had their coffee yet.
Yes, exactly. So as you work with your team, you'll tend to know who you can approach jokingly, who you have to approach as if they're Mr. Spock. And it helps that person help you. Because if you approach somebody who is, say, Mr. Spock, and you go up to them joking about, hey, look at what I found, and make a joke out of it, that person's going to be looking at you sideways like, who the hell are you and what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm. And why
Because,
are you joking about what is clearly very serious?
right, because they want the details on what happened. I want to fix it. That's it. I don't want anything else. Just give me what I need. I want data.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other person, you can go out and start joking with that person, and it helps them look at what you need them to look at.
Makes sense. I like kind of how your outlook on this, we're on the same team, applies both with how you're talking about the bugs, but then we found a new way to apply it for the automation, right? Where it was, instead of you coming to me for help with, let me see if this is actually a bug, you and I had this conversation starting about some of the trouble you were seeing with, they just changed this spot of the application, and now I have to completely rewrite the tests.
Yes. That goes into the kind of the object handling and putting everything together in classes and mapping it out. What that ended up doing, which oddly enough translates into what you you referred to as defensive programming, which is an amusing term for me, because I usually refer to as any sort of programming skill as kung fu. Yes. So yes, I've improved my kung fu, which is really important. So the object handling and building everything into classes kind of made it so that we've separated the actual test case from the code so much. The test case simply tells you, this is what I'm doing, and it will take you through steps. Then we have functions that actually do the stuff. And then we have classes that tells everything where everything is. So that's broken down to the point where, as previously, like I said, everything was just kind of a stream of consciousness dump to make a process work. So now everything's organized, whereas before something changes, it breaks everything. I have to go through every single little piece of every test case to fix it. Whereas now something changes, I simply modify the object, and everything else is agnostic and doesn't care, because the class is what's telling it, hey, this is where everything is.
Okay, so to kind of pull that apart, we seem to have introduced maybe 2 or 3 steps in this, where a test case used to be the code itself to go and do the operation, say, create a new user. Yes. Now you're telling me that you separated it using this, I'm going to call it a page object model, as a class that represents the page. And your test case says, I need you to do this and this and this, and that's just the sequence of steps. But the actual how you went and did this, go click this button, go find that div, that's all been moved out?
Yes. I've broken it. So yeah, the test case itself is literally going to be a stack of function calls. And the functions are named more along the lines of what's actually going on. If you were to read the actual test case, it's just saying, okay, I'm navigate to this page. I'm going to this page. I'm going to click this button, and the page that comes up on that page, now I'm going to go to this tab. Then I'm going to execute a search on grid, and all of those little things are broken down into as functionalized as much as possible.
Okay.
So ideally, what I'm going to end up with, my plan, is to basically have a test case that's just a bunch of function calls, maybe a couple of little things in between to transition, but it's going to be function calls and transitions. You should be able to read your test case and say, I know what that does. Have no idea what the application does, but I still know what this is trying to do.
Okay. So this page object model is allowing you to kind of abstract the how is the application doing all of that. And I can just describe to you, this is the operation I expect. When I've done these things, I expect that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So are you able to kind of reuse pieces of this object model, the class thing that you're talking about, in multiple test cases, or are they all still kind of together?
So I've broken some things out. I'm still digging a lot deeper into it, because as I start going deeper into the application and more of the more complicated parts, There are some things that are reusable, such as like the advanced search panel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to break that out to where it's just a reusable thing that can be, initialize the class and here you have it.
Okay, so right, to provide context, that's the little panel along the right side that when we click this, it opens up and it allows a much more detailed search of the content on the table, right?
Yes, and
okay.
That exists in multiple places. So I'm going to write just one class that maybe has the kind of the basic structure of it all, and then maybe figure out a way to add things to it, because since it's something that's being used all over the place, I'm guessing there's got to be a way to have a class that has the basic structure of that panel, and it can be used all over the place.
So you really are creating reusable pieces to represent the interaction portion of your test, so you can use it in multiple test cases, even if the test case is for this page over here and that page over there.
Yes, and the same with like there's like a service pop-up, service center pop-up, I think it was. There's a particular pop-up that's used in like 6 or 7 different places, and I broke that pop-up out to make it simple, and you can just make a call, give me this class, and now I can use it wherever.
Very nice. That's got to be saving you a lot of frustration, especially as you bring the 2 other QAs on board.
Yes, and a lot of this work I'm ending up doing, it's making this change when I decided to scrap this project and start over, was solely for that purpose, to make it easier for other people to come in and work on it. And it's been massively successful as far as getting them interested in understanding how automation works. And oddly enough, it has changed the way I look at things, some of these methodologies, because I know how to generally put together scripts and make them work, but to organize it in such a way that somebody can come in behind me and look at it and just easily get what I'm doing is something completely different. They're totally different skills.
Makes sense.
So, and the nice thing is, I think I haven't checked with the developers to look at my stuff, because I don't really want them looking at my stuff until I'm feel like I'm further along and it looks good. I'm weird about things like that. I'm kind of like an artist.
Devs are the same way.
Yeah, don't look at my stuff till it's done, man. But I really believe the way this is structured now, a developer can look at it and say, hey, this looks like something I would do. Or I understand what you're getting at. And if a developer can look at QA stuff and say, I get this, it opens the door to a whole lot of collaboration.
So the idea of this page object model, where you are modeling the things on the page as interactable properties, you're seeing the potential to pull in devs to help you make better test cases?
Absolutely. I think with this, the way this is going, I honestly believe that if for some reason we got into a massive time crunch, which is the case, I really believe that the way this project is being put together, as far as the automation, a developer can come in and look at it and say, hey, I can give you a hand. Because
so you could have devs writing test cases off of the library you're creating.
Right, because they can look at what we have and they can say, hey, I know we're in a time crunch. I've got some free time on my stuff because everything's piling up because it's going into QA. Let me give you a hand. I can write a script for you.
So that actually sounds like kind of the inversion of an idea I was teasing you with earlier, where QAs are slowly becoming more and more developers. It's just that you develop on a different part of the system. Now you're telling me that a dev could transition over and start being a QA.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. Because I like my world. I love QA. Because I break stuff. It's what I'm good at. But now that we're writing with this with the automation going the way it's going and in that direction, yeah, it's starting to look more like a developer and a QA becoming a developer. But no, I think I can draw the developer into my world.
I think that makes sense. There's benefits to both.
Yeah. And honestly, this has changed the way I see things in multiple ways, much like higher level math changes the way you view the world. Everything's slightly different because you have a different understanding of it. I have a slightly different understanding of the developers, and just I'm going more that way. But I think the same can be said for the developer coming our way, because they'll have a different view from our perspective. And the more perspectives that you can look at something from, the better off you'll be no matter what.
Makes sense. Can you give me a little bit more of an example on the kind of shift in perspective that you've had or that you've experienced now that you're approaching automation in this different fashion?
Well, a lot of the time, oddly enough, the way I work, I'm a very chaotic person by nature. And when I'm writing automation, I try to cover all, I probably cover more bases than I should. I try to encompass everything as much as I can. So you usually end up with this large blob of nebulous scripts that go out and start doing everything, and the tendrils just get hooked into all kinds of other things. So if somebody were to come in and look at it, no, you might like run away screaming Cthulhu is here. Now, I still have all that, but there's another layer on top of it where I organize it. And a lot of this happens in my head, but you literally put another layer on top of it that breaks everything out to where now your tendrils are still going all over the place, but now you have this bundle of tendrils here, this bundle of tendrils here, and this bundle goes out and does these things. This bundle goes out and does these things.
Oh, so basically Cthulhu braided his beard.
Yeah, exactly.
Never thought I'd be able to use that in a sentence.
Yeah. Look at who you're talking to.
Fair enough. I did learn the awesomeness of beard braiding from you, sir.
Fair enough. But hey, it makes a difference putting that additional layer on top of things, because I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still the same normal chaotic person. However, there's just that's a good way. There's a communications layer that's put on top of that translates my chaos into something understandable to normal humans.
That's very important.
And that's essentially what this has done.
So it's essentially that by using the abstraction, you're now able to talk in something closer, not quite, but closer to English.
Yeah.
When you're talking to different people. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas before, most people don't have any idea what the hell I'm saying.
We do live in rarefied atmospheres.
Yes.
So I did want to take a moment to kind of talk to how this all got started. Not literally how did you get into automation, but the shift in your perspective came from a couple of conversations you and I had from a major pain point when developers, people like me, went and just shoved in a code change that we needed for a feature, but broke like all of your automation.
Yeah, but that boils down to being in an environment and with certain people that you feel comfortable talking to. And it's not necessarily any kind of science behind that. I guess it goes back to the communication in general. You have to be able to talk to your people. And you initially, I wouldn't have like run up to you and said, "Hey man, I got this problem. Can you take a look at it? Let's figure this out, because this automation thing, it ain't working with all these changes that are coming in."
Right.
Because if I didn't know you, it might sound like I'm complaining. But after being on the team for a while, you kind of get a sense of people's personalities, and you know how to approach them. And you also learn a big thing is, who are your problem solvers? who likes solving problems. Big thing. Because some people can be really, really extraordinarily talented, but they may not necessarily be problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
You give them a task to build something, they will build an amazing thing. But if something in that thing broke, they may not necessarily know the best way to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are actually problem solvers. They look at a situation, you come to them and say, hey, this is what I have. They can look at it and break it down into little pieces and say, okay, fix this, and this, and the end result would be your problem goes away. Those are the people you want to talk to, and you're kind of one of those people.
Yes, sir. So your recommendation, if you were to kind of coach another QA into how you could leverage your own dev team's help to build better automation, would be to approach it like that. Get to know your team pretty well, get to know how to talk to them and engage them in problems, and then find the people who are able to kind of jump into the new context to find good ways around the things that are blocking you.
Yeah, and oddly enough, a lot of the time I find pulling a developer into QA, it kind of helps them because it just breaks them out of what they were doing. Because a lot of the time you could be working on an issue and just constantly working on it, and you just kind of lose track of the world. You just pull them away to take a look at something completely different and show them, hey, I'm looking at your same stuff, but I'm looking at it from this side. Let's take a look at it. How can we fix this? And, it'll break them out of their rut for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You'll usually end up as a QA learning something about the development side of it and how they're approaching it, which will help you better test what comes from that developer.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, it makes a big deal to be able to find the people that have the right personality to do it, but you can't be afraid to bring a developer into helping with QA just because they're a developer. Mm-hmm. They have a whole different perspective, and particularly with automation is development work, period. There's no other way to look at it. Mm-hmm. And the developer has probably been developing for a very long time in regards to, you doing QA. I've been doing QA since like 97. Haven't been doing automation as long as that, but still, mm-hmm. You do QA for long enough, you suffer a certain amount of insanity, and all this. you start looking at things very skewed, and you start mm-hmm. As soon as somebody puts something out, you look at it and say, okay, I know about 3 or 4 different edge cases that are going to find something weird here. And when you're trying to do automation around things like that, it's a little weird, but developers have a way of organizing the world, because everything, when you're building, you have to have it all mapped out before you even really start the work. Mm-hmm. If you can apply some of that to your world in QA, it's the amount that helps is I can't even put it into words, because now you're getting the structure from the development side to see where everything is supposed to be, and you're looking at it from your QA side, and you can see all the chaos in between the lines. So let the developer put the lines there for you. Let them put the structure there. You're still going to be able to see and enjoy your chaos. That's always going to be there. You just get to read between the lines that they put there.
And because you're now putting stuff in the lines where people might expect them, we can talk about the thing that's going on.
Yes, you can say, you don't just go to your developer. It's like, man, I found some really funky stuff. Now you can go to your developer and say, hey, I found some really funky stuff in this box.
Yep, and we're all like, how did you get inside the box?
Yes, exactly. So it's all intertwined, even though, it's been since the beginning of development in QA that this adversarial thing, and it really needs to die. It does nothing but hinder work, and it usually makes people angry at each other. And Being angry is tiresome.
Oy, I hear you there. So if we had just two bits of parting advice for our QA entering the wonderful world of automation, or our dev who's realizing, hey, I might actually be able to help my QA achieve better results, what would you provide them as the recommendation to get this whole ball rolling?
The most important thing I can say is talk. Talk a whole lot. Say what's on your mind. If you have issues, bring them up. Discuss everything. Because if you don't, you'll never really find I'd say the most elegant solution that you're really going to want. You're not going to find the solution that everybody can be involved in and get behind. And ask for help. I know that sounds strange, and a lot of people have a hard time doing it. I have a hard time doing it. I don't like asking for help because I think I can do everything. I'm just that good. But ask for help. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make you any, it's not a sign of weakness. I'll put it like that. Ask for help. You learn stuff. Always be willing to learn. You have to. Things change every day in technology, changes every 5 minutes. So ask for help. Somebody may have read an article somewhere yesterday that could help you. May not have even existed before that yesterday, but it's going to happen. And there's always a better way to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're willing to talk to people and willing to learn, you'll usually end up developing your own fingerprint in how you do things, because you'll have this well of knowledge to draw from, and you have to look at developers as a part of that well of knowledge. They're people too. Everybody's going to know something that you don't know. So draw upon it. It makes you a better person at what you do and everything that you're going to do in life.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to kind of walk us through the changes, and especially walking us through a way that we can start creating that in whatever team we happen to be part of.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to help.
Awesome.
It's made a huge difference in my life already. So the quality of life being in QA has changed immeasurably the past 2
I'm
months.
very glad to hear it, sir.